I'm Ken Greathouse. I'm chair of our church council. And today I'm going to act as our facilitator for today's session. A few logistics as we start out. We're dividing the session today up into 3 segments. The first segment will be a 30-minute session with presentations from various folks on the subject matter for today. And to facilitate a richer experience for you over Zoom, we're suggesting that you go to the upper right-hand corner of your screen, and you should have a button there that either says Gallery View or Speaker View. And if you will set that to Speaker View, then I think you'll have a nice big screen of the presenter that's talking. Denise has muted everyone coming in, and we would ask that you leave for this first 30-minute segment, you leave your audio on mute. And we want to let you know that we are recording this for later playback. So today's session is the first of 3 conversations that we want to have with everyone over the next 3 consecutive Sunday mornings at the same time as we're doing it today. And I would encourage each of you to try to make an effort to attend all 3 sessions, as the content of each following session will build on the prior session. And I think it'll be a richer and more comprehensive experience for you if you're able to attend all 3. The format for today, which will be similar in future sessions, is we're going to start out with a 30-minute segment of presentations that will cover our 5-year strategic plan, changes and improvements that we're envisioning for both our Los Altos and our Mountain View campuses. We'll review with you certain staffing changes that have taken place or that we're planning. And we'll very briefly, we will talk with you about our initial plans to return to in-person worship. So following these presentations, we will then put everyone into smaller breakout rooms where you will be able to have discussion about the content that you have just seen and ask your facilitator in your breakout room any questions that you might have. At the end of that 30-minute segment, we will all come back together for a final 15-minute wrap-up. And if there have been any questions during the breakout sessions that need to be answered more fully, we'll try to handle that in the last 15-minute session. So with that, I'd like to turn the podium over to Pastor Kathy to get today's session started. Kathy?
Thanks, Ken. Welcome, everyone. I wonder if we might just say a word of prayer together. You have blessed us richly, God. It is grace to us to be in this place with these other people, to be called to your work of being the church in the world, to be in the company of one another and especially of you. So be right in the middle of this, of us this day, in all the ways through wires and technology and Wi-Fi and all those things. Fill us all with the same love and hope and care for this world, we pray, in the name and in the way of Jesus. Amen. You know, every week at the beginning of worship, I talk about connection and compassion and courage as the values that sustain and motivate our work and are the ways we see and we practice the presence of God with each other. And those are our aspirations, but I think they are also the actual ways we are with each other. And so we've invited 3 people among us, 3 members of the congregation, to talk for just a couple of minutes about how they have seen those 3 qualities in our life together over the last year. So I want to just invite each of them to share something with you. First, Alice Lowry, who's going to talk about connection and what she sees in this church in its sustained connections. Welcome, Alice.
Thank you, Kathy. I'm supposed to talk about connection, and these are my feelings toward it. When the lockdown ruling came out mid-March in 2020, I took my calendar and I crossed out each event that had been canceled. From a full calendar, it was left with one entry each week, church service. I did my best in the first weeks to be active. However, I missed the connection with other people and with the church. And so it was a surprise to me to realize soon that Los Altos Methodist Church was the center of my activities. It was more than before the lockdown. I want to see how much I appreciated what the church did to connect with individuals like me. The leadership took on learning Zoom techniques to supply us with a lifelong line to the church. They offered all types of classes and presentations on Zoom. It allowed members to get to know each other in the classes where we broke up into small groups and discussed personal ideas. Kathy Mashane's 8-week Wednesday night class started April 1st. Megan and John started Zoom classes for the seniors soon after that. We had 2 series of brain health. We have a Friday 11 a.m. Zoom presentation on a variety of subjects every Friday, and it's still going on. Often there were meetings on Thursday. So immediately I had different activities with different people in the church. Then the evening classes started. Most of them have been centered on racism. The first was based on the book America's Original Sin. Many of the books were recommended, and many of us read many books on this subject. Merle's class on the book Cast is still going on. We slowly are studying each chapter. Our class in Flourishing in 2021 just ended. What a wonderful way to analyze our values and discuss what changes we wanted to make this year. Susie Buckholz and John were wonderful leaders. The daily devotions, Zoe, music, and all the interaction of church leadership sustained me. My point is, our church made a tremendous difference in my life living alone in these 12 months. Thank you for making this last year more meaningful and fruitful than I ever imagined possible. Our church did put connection first. You did it with compassion, and you did it with courage. And I want to thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you. Phil, tell us about how you've seen compassion in the church's life this last year.
Thank you, Pastor. Well, when I think about what it means to be a person and a church grounded in compassion, the compassion that Jesus teaches us about, I can't help but remember the story of the Good Samaritan. And I know that you all have heard it before, so I won't bore you with a retelling, but I want to remind you of several key parts of the story that speak to how this church lives out our call to compassionate living. First, there's a pause, right? That Samaritan pauses, he notices, he listens in a way that the other folks who pass by this beaten man don't, right? And then after he listens and understands, there's this great outpouring of love, of generosity, because of what he hears and what he finds out. And that's what we do. We listen to the needs of our most vulnerable neighbors, and then we stretch to meet those needs so that flourishing may truly be a reality for everyone. And I see that in Compassion Week, which began as Compassion Weekend, and how that has stretched and widened so that those programs and those services and those opportunities to neighbor and to be in community and to meet the needs of some of our most vulnerable neighbors has stretched and become a program that now includes 3,000 volunteers, even amidst a pandemic. I see it in Advent generosity, right? Again, a small program that began just raising a couple $1,000s. And in the last 2 years, we've been able to raise almost $500,000 to just bless, right? So many folks in our community, especially this year with wildfire relief efforts and students, giving them opportunities to really engage fully in distance learning. I could go on and on. Our outreach connection program, the scholarships that we provide to women at Africa University. In all of it, right, we see a desire, right, to live out that call to compassionate living, to first listen, to learn, to understand fully, and then to outpour love and generosity. And the thing about the parable that we read in scripture is it didn't actually happen, but it does happen, right, in how this church lives into that call. And so it's an honor and a privilege to be able to just share a few ways that I see compassion lived out through this congregation and to be part of that congregation. So thank you, Pastor, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Phil. And Karen Kellett, who is part of our Changemaker Initiative leadership team. Karen, talk to us about courage for you in this last year.
Okay. When Kathy asked me to spend a few minutes talking about courage, I literally laughed inside, and I thought, boy, does she have me wrong. But let me tell you why I laughed and why I ultimately said yes. I laughed because I'm an Enneagram 6. And for any of you who know about or don't know about the Enneagram, 6s are security oriented. They're cautious and they're indecisive. Their greatest fear is to be caught unprepared or unable to defend against danger. And they tend to, instead of relying on courage, they tend to go out and plan around risk. They anticipate problems and make sure they're going to avoid danger. So I found it, since it's so against my nature, I found it funny that I would have anything to say about courage. In fact, when Kim asked me to take the job of the director of learning for the Changemaker Church movement, all of my alarm bells sounded, and I immediately began making a list of all the reasons that I should say no. And my list was perfectly crafted to protect me from everything that I was afraid of about taking that job. And yet there was this voice I kept hearing, and it said, how can you not do this? How can you not? And this is something that I've learned from LAUMC. And this view of courage is very new to me and very scary, because it showed me that I never really had that much faith in my faith. And what I needed to do was to just do it, just say yes and believe that God was by my side. And so I took the job. And to be honest, I'm still afraid of failing. I'm still very insecure about my work. And I'm often indecisive about what to do next. But at least I no longer retreat. So from LAUMC, I've learned that courage isn't about being a conquering hero. It's about showing up and saying yes and trusting that God is by your side. And I've learned about this, like I said, through my time, through being with LAUMC in a variety of projects in many ways, but primarily I think the courage of LAUMC to invest in the Changemaker Initiative and to take the risk of trying this new thing and seeing where it would go when people ask us, and sometimes we say, we don't know yet, we're still figuring that out. So I'm very grateful for the investment in the Changemaker Initiative and the fact that we can all learn about how our faith and courage are so connected. Morgan Harper Nichols perfectly captures what I want to always remember about courage. She says, "Let today be the day you breathe deeply and live courageously. Let today be the day you remember that to pursue courage is to leave behind a pursuit of perfection or the need to get it all right. To pursue courage is to approach the day with an open heart that says, I am here to learn whatever it is I am meant to learn. I am here to grow how I am meant to grow, no matter what is unknown." Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, all three. You know, that the words, those values, connection, compassion, and courage grew out of they kind of emerged out of a process that was in place for most of the year 2019. A group of about 20 of us embarked on a strategic visioning process. And those three words came first. And then out of that, we went to work on at least the overview of a strategic vision for the next 3 to 5 years of LAUMC's life together. And we were just about to tell you all about that strategic vision when we got shut down. I mean, literally the week we were planning it last spring, we heard that the churches would close, and we thought, okay, a couple weeks, we'll be fine. Then we'll just postpone and we'll all be back together. And obviously that has not happened, but that vision seems to be holding up. And I want to tell you give you a little bit of the overview of that vision now. So we've got a few slides here to go with us. We start with this statement: connection, compassion, and courage, that all may flourish, because flourishing is God's big vision for the world. And so that's where we start, with God's vision, not our own. And then we say this: we will be a community that is characterized by authentic relationships and sustained connections with one another and with God. And as we do this, we said that we believe the three primary spiritual issues of this time and this place are loneliness, anxiety, and social isolation. For every age group, all around us, these are the three primary spiritual issues that we want our ministries to address. And then we said we will take 3 initiatives over the next 3 to 5 years that stretch toward the wideness of God's compassion. First, we want to talk about, this is not a done deal, we want to talk about what would it be like if we listened for and discerned some particular calling to make an impact in our community, that this church can do that no one else is doing or can do. You know, between our outreach connection and Advent generosity and volunteer efforts and many, many other things over the years, this congregation releases hundreds of thousands of dollars and volunteer hours into the community. What if God wants us to be pointing all of that into making some measurable impact in our community? We don't know what that is yet, but maybe we should be listening for what that is. So that's the one initiative. The second is we are going to grow into 3 campuses, delivering the goodness of church on 3 campuses: Los Altos, Mountain View, and a new campus that we're calling online. What's the opportunity for robust community and connection for people who will never set foot perhaps on either the Los Altos and Mountain View campus, but who can be with us online? And we wrote this before we knew the pandemic was going to happen. So now we feel like, oh, we saw something ahead of our time, and we know now even more that 3rd online campus is going to be an important part of the church's work. And then we said our 3rd initiative is to expand into alternative forms of Christian community. The kinds of things we're doing at Front Porch and with Art Changes Us both ministries in Mountain View. Maybe something that looks like the Love Your Actual Neighbor dinners that we talked about last Lent before we shut down our in-person gatherings. So that's the compassion piece. And then to accomplish these things, we said we commit ourselves, next slide, Denise. We commit ourselves to courage, a willingness to take meaningful risks in our life together. We're going to be very straightforward and unapologetic and clear about what it means to be a Christian in this time and in this place. We want to develop ministry at the intersection of faith and work. And Pastor Dirk is working to actually focus our Creekside worship services on that intersection as we turn from a Sunday on a Sunday evening toward being ready for our work weeks. We want to expand our partnerships in the community with the organizations that are also doing God's work in the community, the kinds of organizations that are part of our outreach connection, and others. We want to make sure that our governance structures support nimbleness and courageous action. We want a culture that encourages innovation and experimentation. And we know we want to challenge one another to the kind of financial commitment that will allow us to do all this work together. And then finally, we are clear that of many things we could be spending our time and money on, these are the things we want to prioritize investments in. Renovation of our campuses to enhance their capacity and their visibility, their accessibility, and their hospitality, right? And now we know after this year that that includes our outdoor space as well as our indoor space, right? And that includes, and also to expand our technology so that we can enhance and expand our online communications and our community. That too is a priority for us. We want to reinvest in youth and children's ministries, historic strengths of this church. We want to do more ministry in Mountain View than we have done already, and to use that Mountain View campus as a center for our neighboring efforts in that community. We want to develop more culturally relevant on-ramps for people who maybe won't come to church for the first time because they're looking for worship, but will come because they're looking for Compassion Week or change making, like we have in the Changemaker Initiative. And then finally, we want to focus on leadership development, not only in staff, not only in pastors, but among our congregation as a whole. More leaders means we can do more ministry. And that is, more ministry is what we want to be doing over these next several years. Thanks. Ken. Denise, can you unmute Ken? There you go.
There we go. I'm sorry. So we are at the point where we're ready to go into breakouts.
No. Campus master planning.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kathy. I thought you were going to introduce.
Oh, sorry. I can.
Hey.
So I can do it. So we have just begun a campus master planning process that builds on a master plan that was a significant amount of work, perhaps 10 years ago. So Denise is going to introduce where we are so far in this campus master planning process.
Actually, Pastor Kathy.
Or Mike, yeah. Sorry.
All right. So we've been engaged in updating and revisiting the campus master plan, like Pastor Kathy said, leveraging some really in-depth work that was done a number of years ago, and looking at that in light of some of the items that are addressed in the strategic plan, some of the different areas we want to go with online community, having the Mountain View campus now, as well as COVID-19 and the broader perspective that we've gained in the last year. So we're building on all the work that has been done previously, what we've learned recently, and where we plan to go in the future. It's a pretty small team that we have, but we think it's representative of a lot of the areas and interests in the church. Pastor Kathy and Ken Greathouse are kind of the strategic perspective members of the team, and consulting with Dirk DeMonte on that. The board of trustees are represented by me and Kelly Johnson, who also brings architecture skills to the group, and kind of envisioning the aesthetics of the master plan. Ministries and programs are Pastor Sam and Pastor Jeremy. And then from the staff perspective, we have Harold and Denise. So I think we've got kind of the four corners of the square covered here, and working. So through this planning process, we've kind of taken a layered approach to it in how we look at the work, what lens we view it through. And these layers, and we were also looking at it in terms of a 5-year time horizon. This isn't a 20-year master planning effort. We don't know where we're going to be in 20 years. So we decided to look 5 years out, where the church is going, what facilities and campus do we need to support that work of the strategic plan for the next 5 years. And the layers we used was a use and function layer, looking at, okay, what do we have? What's the age? What's the condition? Let's look at our long-term maintenance plan for each building. Where's our deferred maintenance, the highest in buildings? Which buildings have already been updated and are in good shape? And then we're overlaying on top of that a program and ministry layer. What are our priorities for ministries and programs? What are their space needs? What do we envision those ministries and programs doing over the next 5 years? What do we think they're going to need to be successful? And then we added a third layer of repair and maintenance. So looking at what items we really need to do to make the facilities usable, get the deferred maintenance backlog taken care of, and updating the different project costs in the long-term maintenance plan. And the fourth layer is looking at what renovations do we want to do, and where do we want to grow and invest for the next 5 years. And that's the fun part. It's the wish list for each building and campus. How are we going to align those with our ministry and our program priorities, the way we're using them now and the way we want to use them in the future. And then the slightly less fun part of ranking those things and having to decide where the priority, what we can do and what we should prioritize, what needs to be deferred to later. But then it gets exciting seeing all this stuff that we think we can get done in the next 5 years or less. So the proposal that we're working towards developing is again, to do this in the near term. So over 3 phases, over about 3 or 4 years, to be able to implement different stages of projects. And so we're going to balance the investment in growth areas and the priorities for the church, along with accomplishing some of the deferred maintenance stuff that's important. We don't want any roofs that are leaking. We need to have paint on the buildings. And so there's some things that we need to do to get rid of the deferred maintenance, but also really set us up for a successful future. And it's going to include both Los Altos and Mountain View campuses. We kind of look at them, they're one and the same. They're one campus, just 2 different locations, and we need to invest in both of those for their different programs and ministries. And we hope to have some kind of proposal ready to discuss within about a month. It's a very quick turnaround, but again, we're building on some really in-depth work that was done over the last 10 years, and now just kind of adding those 4 layers I talked about, and the new perspective that we have, and the great resources the staff and the pastoral team for where we're going to prioritize over the next few years.
Great, thank you, Mike. The the work that the campus master planning team is doing is exciting, to say the least. And the pandemic has created some opportunities for us to think about things a little bit differently. So you'll be hearing more about that shortly. Our next speaker is Claudia Morgan. Claudia heads up our SPRC committee, and she's going to talk with us a little bit about the staffing situation at LAUMC.
Yes, hi, good morning. It's my pleasure actually to tell you about a couple of additions to our ministry team. And by ministry team, I mean the people on the left half of the slide that you're looking at. The two new additions are Lee French, who will be Director of Youth Ministries, and Brittany Skye McCrae, who will be Director of Children's Ministries. Interestingly, both Lee and Brittany will be moving here from Nashville, Tennessee, although they did not know each other before they engaged with us. Lee French will begin at the end of this month. She comes from Brentwood United Methodist Church, which is in a suburb of Nashville, where she's been the Associate Director of Student Ministries for the past 8 years. In addition to seminary work, she has a graduate degree from NYU in social work, and her social work career had taken her to many different countries, including South Africa, Haiti, Guatemala, Nicaragua, and Brazil. Lee will be working with Pastor Jeremy, who is our pastor to the next generation, and he will continue to oversee this ministry as well as the children's ministry. And she'll also be working with Brittany Skye, because we wish to be intentional about aligning all of our age level ministries through from children, in fact, through our senior or wisdom generation. Brittany Skye is going to begin in May. She has graduate and undergraduate degrees in Christian education and substantial experience in designing and leading ministry that is about helping families with children raise good people. In fact, she has literally written the book on this, a book called Raising Good People. She has led children's ministry in congregations both larger and smaller than LAUMC. And for the past 8 years, she has been the senior editor of children's ministry curriculum and publications for Abingdon Press, which is the United Methodist Church's publishing house. Brittany will work with Pastor Jeremy, with Lee French, with Heidi Bliss, and Dee Gray, co-directors of the Children's Center. These changes have happened as a result of national searches. They are particularly exciting because of the caliber of these two individuals that we've been able to attract. Both of them have been willing and in fact eager to make what's a huge move for them to come here. And they were drawn to LAUMC by our record and reputation for innovation. With the addition of Lee and Brittany to the leadership team that's already in place here, LAUMC really has a stunningly strong leadership team. Both of these positions are an investment in what we see as a historic and future strengths of LAUMC. We are convinced that investment in these youth and children's ministries will build our capacity to grow and thrive. Young people and families with children in our church and our larger community need support and connection now more than ever. And this congregation is getting better and better also at seeing and serving people beyond the church's walls. LAUMC is one of the few churches that will emerge from this last year ready and prepared to join God's work of rebuilding a world in which everyone can flourish. We already had a strong leadership team, and with these two additions, it's really quite an amazing one. So I hope you'll look forward to their arrival here and get to know them. They're both quite exciting and fun, in addition to being incredibly experienced and competent. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. We are excited to have both Brittany and Lee join our team. It will be a really great experience when they're both here. Our next and final speaker prior to the breakout session is Pastor Dirk. There's a group of us that have been meeting to try to plan for a return to in-person worship. As the pandemic begins to hopefully subside, and as more and more of us are immunized, it does seem that there will be a time where it will be safe to do so. And safety is a key consideration for us. So Dirk is driving this this process, and Dirk, I'll turn it over to you to explain where we are in this process.
Great, thank you, Ken. And I'm in charge of safety. That's actually a very scary thing. I think over this is the 57th week that we have not had in-person worship, and none of us ever thought it would be this long, and it's going to be a little bit longer. The question I have been asked without a doubt more than any other question is, when will we reopen? I think we're getting closer to actually being able to answer that. Our plan is, and as Ken said, we've had this amazing group of people, a reopening task force that's been meeting actually for many months. And as you all know, we've had to adjust our sites along the way as it's looked like things were getting better, then got worse, and now really looks like things are getting better. So our first plan, the first stage of reopening is going to be outdoor worship. And we're going to begin with one service at 10 o'clock outside. And our hope and our plan is to begin that on June 13th. That's what we're shooting for. What will happen is we will still record our indoor worship, and we'll record that at 8:30. We'll rebroadcast it at 10, just like we're doing now. And so there will still be a high quality online worship presence, but we will be adding, we hope, if all continues to go the way it's going, an outdoor worship service at 10 o'clock beginning on Sunday, June 13th. You'll see a kind of schematic of our church property. And if you see kind of the horseshoe shaped, that's where our handicap parking is right now, and our drop-off place for our children's center. That's where we will be staging our worship leadership, and chairs will. I'm motioning on this diagram with my hands. I hope you can see my hands on the diagram. But the congregation will be sitting spread out past that, and this is all still kind of in developmental stages. We're going to do a walkthrough, and we're going to figure it all out. This morning we took the very first poll question. We asked the question, when we return to outdoor worship, would you attend? It was an amazing thing to watch these poll results come in. The first batch, only 25 people answered the first batch, and it was 20 out of 25. And then they kept coming in and kept coming in and kept coming in. And it's at 78%. So 20 out of 25 is 80%. It stayed consistent throughout the morning that about 78% of the folks watching online today said they would come back to in-person worship outside. I know the next question is, when will we return to inside worship like we've all known and loved before? We don't know. We know that things are beginning to open up this summer, that our governor is planning to remove restrictions, and that will be we'll be watching that carefully. Kathy and I are talking constantly about this and evaluating things, and the reopening task force, as I said, is meeting regularly. I'm anticipating sometime, I'm hoping and anticipating that by Christmas, we will be back to indoor worship, and hopefully sooner than that. Thanks.
Thank you, Dirk. All right, so now we're at the conclusion of our prepared presentations. Our next session is a breakout, and everybody is going to be placed into a smaller group in a breakout session with a facilitator. And this will be your opportunity to ask questions that you may have about anything that you heard in the presentations today. And then at the conclusion of this breakout, we will come back together for a final wrap up. So Denise, if we can push everybody into the breakout rooms, that would be great.
It is in process. People are going.
You don't have to do anything. Denise does all the work here to get everybody into breakout rooms.
It will, the system, it takes a little bit of time for you to get to a breakout room, but you will.
That's the theory anyway.
Why is that not working? Oh. Why is that not working? That did not, okay, not work. I don't know how to do this any faster.
If you were at the 8:30 worship service this morning and your computer went all glitchy, it wasn't you, it was the internet. And the message that I offered about LAUMC's finances, you can find on the church's website or on a link that is in the chat room right now. And it will also be sent to you by email tomorrow. You might want to take a look at that though. The link is in the chat space right now.
Yeah, Kathy. I didn't expect to have to assign people manually. You gotta tell her that it didn't work. Okay, why? You're on mute. I'm on mute.
Are you getting the last few people? You're gonna have to send them manually. There's still people in here.
It says that they're all in.
They're not.
I can't figure out why these last few people aren't moved either, because it doesn't show us any unassigned.
I know. So what do I do? Do you know?
No, I don't know. I've been trying to figure it out because I've been working to assign people as well.
I have unassigned as 0.
Okay.
I have 11.
For those of you, yeah. So I'm going to do a test for those of you who are not in a waiting room or who are not in a group. I'm going to put you in the waiting room and put you back in and see if that gets us to the point where we are now able to assign you. So just hang on a sec as you get put in the waiting room temporarily.
Oh, I see where they are.
Yeah, that didn't help.
So my breakout rooms, it shows that all are assigned.
Yep. Same when I look at it.
Yeah.
We have a Zoom glitch going on.
So how about, shall I just lead a breakout room right here?
Sure.
Hi, Carol. Hi, Hal. Is Anne here? Whose iPad? Hello, iPad.
And we would invite you all to take yourselves off mute for this section.
Carol and Cliff. Hal, are you there? Oh, you know what? I wonder if they have double presences. Does that work? Does that, some people have? Cliff and Carol, it doesn't look like you're muted. Can you say something? Let's see if I can hear you.
We're not muted that I can see.
I can hear you.
Hope you didn't hear that.
So I've asked both Hal and iPad to unmute, but they haven't. So.
Okay. So let me just ask you, Cliff and Carol, is there anything that you heard that you would like us to talk more about? Or anything that felt unclear to you?
No, I think it was very clear. I'm interested to see the organizational chart. That's the first time I had a clue as to what was doing what in areas. I think the whole congregation would like to see that. But other than that, it seems pretty straightforward. It's like things are getting well organized or moving forward, which I think is a good thing.
Okay. Was there any part of that that sounded particularly good or exciting to you? Anything that felt like new and like kind of felt like, oh, that's a good direction?
Well, I think whenever we start on a direction, you never know where it's going to go. So I think everything that I've seen so far, people have been defined for specific areas that I think are important for a church. You've covered all of the areas: youth, seniors, finance. So they're all there. And I know all of the people who are in charge of the specific area. So I'm quite enthusiastic. There are still a lot of things like Jiang, I think's got a pretty good challenge ahead of him. So I'm enthusiastic. And where are we going to go? Each day is a new day, and tomorrow is guaranteed. So I don't worry about that for a while.
Yeah. Is there anything that worries you particularly about that plan, Cliff, or Carol? Either one of you, yeah.
Not really. I think it sounds really cool. I think it's a good plan going forward.
From the people I know that are in the organizational chart, I think the plan is just that. It's a plan, and I think they're all very capable of taking it where it needs to go.
Let's start in. What I would suggest is if you did go back to gallery view for your breakout, it would be helpful to come back to speaker view for these final wrap up. And everyone is muted. As Pastor Kath indicated, if you have a question, you can put it into the chat. If we have time to answer those, we definitely will. So let me see if there were any questions that emerged in any of the breakout sessions that we need to try to deal with before we finish today. Denise, anything that we need to discuss?
Let's see, some are just coming through. Let's see.
Here's one.
Are there some specific examples of non-optional things that will need to be part of the master plan?
Okay, so I'm assuming that refers to the campus master plan. So I would push that to Mike, if you're still on, to handle that question.
Denise, could you say that again? Are there specific things that need to be addressed?
Are there specific examples of non-optional things that will need to be part of the master plan?
Well, there's some maintenance and repairs we need to do before the roofs start leaking and that sort of thing. So I'd consider that non-optional. Some of the things that we're incorporating into it are, like a video conference capabilities for conference rooms and stuff, with the idea that church meetings or committee meetings are probably going to continue and include an online component to them, even when some or most people might be meeting in person. For those, there might still be people who want to participate online. I'm not sure if that's the direction the question was. I'm not sure that I'm answering the question that was asked. So,
Mike, I think that the question probably was going towards those things that, look, we have to do these no matter what anyway, like HVAC issues, like the roof,
yeah,
those kinds of things.
Yeah, hot water in the bathrooms, those kinds of things. It's recommend. Yeah.
This is Claudia. That was my breakout room. I think the feedback was that there was hunger for a little bit more specifics. So, are there things that are, just absolutely in the master plan now that will be there?
We can give more specifics once we've kind of developed it. We're still kind of in the putting layers on it phase. But I think definitely as part of the reopening and kind of re-envisioning the outdoor use of the church's campus and setting it up to be more flexible for outdoor events in case, something happens again. It just makes us more resilient and more flexible and better utilize the campus space we have. So having some kind of ability to host outdoor events, be it church service or concerts, enhance the ability for the children and youth to engage and play and connect on the church's campus through playgrounds or sports courts, that sort of thing. Those are some of the types of ideas that we know we need to do, in addition to replacing a couple of air conditioning units on at Creekside and that sort of thing. Yeah.
But the ultimate plan will have a lot more specifics, obviously, than what we shared today. We still have to work with the Board of Trustees, and we still have to, flesh out many more sort of ideas around the master plan. So the final proposal will be much more specific. Hey, Ken, there's a question from Dirk's breakout group that was, how will the one large impact project be identified?
So yes, and that question was discussed in the breakout room that I was in as well. Pastor Kathy, you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. It's now been several months since we talked, the strategic planning group talked about this, but at that time, what we were saying was that we would take a significant amount of time initially for discernment, a discernment that would include our own thinking and prayer and listening for God's leading, but also would be outward directed. I know at one point, the subgroup that was working on that proposal or that initiative talked about the possibility of us in the congregation spreading out and having 500 conversations in the community about what's needed. What do people in the Los Altos, Mountain View, and surrounding communities need that is not being supplied right now? And that a church, with its ability to sustain connections and to live out of compassion and to take courageous risks, might provide. So really the idea is not to jump into anything, but to go slowly and really listen for what it is LAUMC can do in the community that no one else can do.
And
Great.
there was one last one, and I think we'll address this in a later session, but there were a number of questions and comments about how are we going to pay for all of these ideas and initiatives sort of in counterbalance with the remarks that you made in worship about sort of the reduction in giving?
Well, I will say it's less than $1.2 trillion. You know, this is our work, right? And this is why we're having this conversation, in part to see, are we of one mind on going forward in this way, right? This strategic plan is an expansion of our ministry. In many ways, it's a growth plan, right? LAUMC has not grown as a congregation for a long time. It's stayed relatively stable. This is a plan for growth and for more ministry and more people and more money. And I think we don't know right now because we've been in this year-long pandemic, but I think we expect in the next year to know whether we have it in us to sort of launch in this direction and to keep growing. And that's part of all of our conversation together. We listen for signs that we are together on this, and they come in attendance of meetings like this, and the kind of feedback that you gave in your breakout rooms, and the kind of commitments that we'll make, our financial commitments that we'll make in the next month. All of those are ways that we have for listening to what you want to do.
We have one final question from Alan's group, and that was, how do we get more information about the good work going on in all of these committees?
That was the same with mine, Kathy, as well.
Yeah, and I'm just going to add to that really quick. I was in Alan's group, and it was expressed that the changes in the youth program are happening so fast and are so severe that that particular parent's kids are a little intimidated by everything that's happening and wondering what the experience that they've been used to at LAUMC, what's going to happen with that experience. And that's a lot to bring up at the end of a meeting, but I did want to get that communicated.
So next week, in this conversation next week, we're going to take a deeper dive into kind of the ministries and programs that have been Los Altos United Methodist Church historic strengths, including children and youth and music and our faith formation work and the Changemaker Initiative. So you will hear more about those things next week. And then the following week, in the third session of this conversation, we're going to talk about some of the newer ministries that you perhaps want to know more about too. Front Porch and Art Changes Us and Zoe, the new online platform. And then we'll talk also about finance and budget implications of all of this. So the kind of the strategic direction here is to move toward more detail on some of these ministries you're asking about.
And Kathy, just one click down. So my group, some of them expressed concern there wasn't kind of communication to those not with Zoom or have access to Zoom or even emails, etc. So improving kind of, that was how that was communicated. And also, I guess, good news was something we used to do, which I guess is no longer. So just improved ways of communicating everything that's going on to the broader congregation was the comment.
Yeah, very good thought. Okay, Denise, we're at the end of our time. Did we have any other final questions?
No, that was it.
All right, well, with that, I would like to thank everyone. We all would like to thank everyone for their attendance today. As I mentioned at the beginning, we hope you come back for session 2 and session 3. And we look forward to seeing you next week. So with that, we'll sign off for today and see you next week.